All right. Well, hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Philadelphia Sports Podcast, a weekly take on Philly sports through the lens of husbands, fathers, and of course, Philly sports fans. Now, before we start tonight's episode, I want to ask you please make sure that you hit the subscription button and the notification button. The subscription button keeps you connected to our community, and the notification button will notify you anytime one of our episodes are airing because we would love for you to join. And actually, folks, I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in the chat so that you can join us if you like. We got some good topics tonight. Now, before we start tonight's episode, I want to ask that you please make sure you hit the subscription button and I'm sorry. Now, if you enjoyed the episode while you're watching, please hit the good old like button to help us.
Even if they don't.
How about that? You know
Even
what? You're
if they
right.
don't.
Here's a new
Just hit it.
contest. Just hit the like button.
Just
What's
hit
the
it,
name,
man.
Help us conquer algorithm.
Yeah, and
So
we
folks,
know a
there we
couple people
go.
that a couple people, Sam, that have probably hit far worse. So just
You ain't lying.
What's up with you, man?
Hey man, I can't complain. God is good. We are in 2025.
How about it?
We're in
How about
2025, man. Think about when we graduated high school.
Oh,
2025. What do we think about what that year would yield? And here we are in the flesh.
we're at the age now.
flesh.
We're at the age now. Like when you watch movies back then, that they'd be like, oh, like Back to the Future, or
Bro,
singing songs about what's going to happen at like 2024, 2020. Like we're at that point now, which is kind of terrifying.
I love that you went there because my wife and I rewatched the Back to the Futures and we rewatched the Matrix series.
goodness.
So we are absolutely locked into what you're talking about, saying, you know what? Weren't there movies out there that were sort of, how do we compare to some of the predictions? And, what are the things that seem to still be aligned with the thoughts that were presented even 20, 30 years ago? Anyway, before we get too much off topic, let's as our main man Jalen Hurts would say, let's keep the main thing the main thing. Let's start here, folks, because we had the probably biggest free agent in Philadelphia Eagles history join the team this offseason and won Saquon Barkley.
Yep.
He joins the team at a time when the running back position was being devalued in the NFL. And he joins a team that we talked about was obviously financially built around the passing game. There was no doubt about it. Even from what we saw with our eye test, it said it doesn't matter. They're paid to pass the ball. Saquon Barkley in his first season with the Philadelphia Eagles surpasses 2,000 rushing yards, which puts him in the Mount Rushmore of all-time running backs. Going into the final week of the season, he has the opportunity to eclipse the all-time rushing record. And when it comes to records, I think you and I would agree that this is the equivalence of the 100-meter dash, right? Like this is the record that actually matters. This isn't the high jump record or the pole vaulting record.
Right.
This is the record of records. And the team elects to rest him instead of allowing him to go for the record. And I just wanted to get your take on this as we enter the new year. What are your thoughts on the fact that in the first season with the Eagles, there was an opportunity to be as historic as it's ever been, and we elected not to go for
it? So it's been said a lot already. People have already commented and kind of beat it into the ground. I think it's more nuanced. So the comment has been made that it could be the right decision, but you could be disappointed. I think I probably fall there. But I think the right decision, we should explain why. I should explain why I think it's the right decision and then why I'm also disappointed. But it's the right decision because we talk ad nauseum about team goals, right? We talk about, the main thing is the main thing. Well, the main thing is the Super Bowl, right? Now, this is a pretty tempting side dish, but it's not the main entree, right? So main thing being what it is, I got an alert, and I'm sure everyone else did who follows sports, that Jordan Love may not play this week, right? Because of his wrist or hand issues. Yeah, right? So you put it in the context of anything could happen. Jalen Hurts hasn't thrown a football in 2.5 weeks because of concussion. A.J. Brown was out last season's playoff game, or was it last season? Yeah, last season against the Bucs because he was injured in a meaningless game. So we've heard all of that.
Well, Green Bay did lose their starting wide receiver.
They lost Christian Watson, right? So you hear all of that, and it's like team, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. The whole thing is the whole thing. And it doesn't guarantee them, but it puts them in a scenario where I can go into that game with all 5 offensive linemen rested. Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, guys who have been banged up, they're going to play. They're going to be healthy, right? You're not going to put Saquon behind a bunch of backups. That wasn't going to ever be the case. So now he's rested and ready to go. And then Jalen Hurts is down recovered and all that. So they're in a better spot. The disappointment, I think, comes in what you kind of said. There's not many chances to leave an indelible imprint on history. And Philadelphia having the chance, and Saquon likely doing it, would have been incredible. The other thing is this, and I don't know that it's been said. Saquon played 6 years with the Giants, right? Or whatever it was, 6-7 years with the Giants. He was let go. He comes here, breaks 2,000 yards. Imagine if Saquon Barkley does not get into the Hall of Fame, right? Who knows how much longer he's going to be an Eagle? Let's say it's the minimum, the 3 years of his contract, right? And then, if he resigns, great, but who knows with age and injury and attrition, he may be a diminished player at that point in time. If he had gotten drafted by the Eagles or a team with a competent offensive line, coaching structure, the whole deal, he probably would have had a more productive first part of his career. And even in spite of that, now having 2,000 yards and then being on top of that, the all-time single-season rushing leader, you're probably getting a gold jacket. So what this means is not just he's foregoing, forget the team for a second, besides all the team goals that they could have possibly accomplished and having them being associated with that, he's foregoing those individual accolades, most notably a very strong likelihood that he was going to get a gold jacket regardless of what he was going to do the rest of his career. That's what it means. So I respect it for the team, but I can be disappointed at the same time. And I am for him. And I think it's an incredibly selfless act. And thank God this is a good dude, because otherwise he could have blown this whole ship up.
Testing. So Malik, I think that was an incredible take, because I agree that there was an opportunity for him to get a gold jacket. Just by the season alone.
Yep.
This season alone. One more game, you get a gold jacket whenever it is you hang it up.
Yep.
To stare in the barrel of that had to have been a week where Coach lost some sleep. Lori may have lost some sleep. Roseman may have lost some sleep, because they recognize what they're asking this person to actually sacrifice for the good of the team. Yes, he is a team player. Yes, we all recognize that he has the same objective. He didn't come to Philadelphia simply to be Saquon Barkley. He was already Saquon. He came for an opportunity to win and to be able to showcase what he was capable of doing. With that said, you now run into a situation where 101 yards, you get a gold jacket at the end of this. And the idea, and more than likely, we both recognize that there's never been a back to repeat in terms of 2,000 rushing yards, right? Like it happens one time in their career.
If next season, it's going to take health and opportunity and all of these other factors, and it's not likely to be. If he gets 1,700 yards, that's an incredible season, but it's still way off from what we're talking about.
I agree. So with that, I think that Saquon will always be recognized as probably one of the best and classiest teammates that have existed, because to your point, there could have been a lot more kicking and screaming around a desire to pursue it. What sort of serves the Eagles, I think, is the fact that throughout the year, there were opportunities for him to get more yards where he passed. And we're talking about a cumulative statistic. And so if we're really identifying, say, hey, Saquon, if this rushing record meant what it means now, then if that pursuit sort of was more embodied throughout the year, then I don't think the Eagles are in a position where they can't roll him out there, right? Like if they know that he was wired to just go get it every time he laced it up, then how do you sit a guy like that?
And you know what the irony is? I want to say, and I could be wrong, Sam, I don't know if you remember early in the season, two points. But the first one, early in the season, there's that clip of him on the bench with Sirianni. And Sirianni asked him, hey, you're at this point, you can go get the Eagles single game record, I think, at that point in time. I think he did break it, but at that time it had not been broken. He said, nah, let the young boys eat, right? He could have gone out there and gotten 15 more yards. He could have fallen forward and gotten 15 more yards, right? So all of a sudden, now it's probably a tougher situation because, let's say 3 or 4 games ago, you're looking at this and you're saying, wow, he's really on track, right? He doesn't need to have a big closing last 2 games to get there. Or even with the last game, if it's a Giants game, do they put him out there for a quarter and say, hey, you're going to get 5 carries and let's see what it is? Because if you're right, the cumulative numbers and the opportunity to go get it, and they decided not to because of health and because it was the right thing to do when the situation, the game wasn't in jeopardy. We already were in command. We were well ahead. You're healthy. Let's get out right now. Same rules apply in Game 17. So I can't imagine. And the other thing is this. And I won't keep running. But everybody talked the whole time about what is Sirianni's role with the team, right? At the very beginning of the season, you're not going to coach the offense. You're not going to coach the defense. You're going to set the tone. You're going to be a leader. You're going to be CEO. This is a CEO decision. This is a CEO decision. Like, this is it. And you can get on board with it or not. But he made that decision. And honestly, when you see Jordan Love get hurt, you see Christian Watson go down, you see A.J. Brown last year, he probably had enough context to make the decision that he did, irrespective of how Landon Dickerson may have felt or whatever the offensive line may have said to him. It's the right call. Disappointed, but the right call.
And heavy is the crown.
Yeah, man.
Right? That's why he's paid the bucks. That's when he's going to be unpopular. It's that catch-22 that he can't escape. But wear it. And I'm appreciative of the fact that he did wear it. He didn't waver throughout the week when it seemed like there was a lot of outside public pressure to convince him to change his mind on the decision that he publicly made.
Yep.
He said we're resting the starters. And after that conversation, it's like everything broke loose. And they're like, really trying to, former players are like, oh, what is he talking about? They got to let him go get it. The Eagles had an early bye this year, right? So you're talking about an 18-week schedule. Their bye was after week 4. We know that this team is all about the postseason. The regular season is not what we're hanging our hat on in terms of success or failure as we evaluate this team. So if we know that it's all predicated on what you do in the postseason, you've now made it to the postseason relatively healthy. To your point, you had the history of the A.J. Brown from the previous year. And that aside, that's enough. So having it being validated, in my opinion, by the injuries that took place on Sunday from Green Bay that played a game in a similar position where, granted,
they were 6 or 7.
They were 6 or 7, so they were in. Who they were going to play was still in the balance. Fair, but you know what I'm saying? You're in.
But the other thing is this, and then maybe we can move on, but let's keep it a buck. There was no, the Giants were going to they would have put 11 dudes in the box. They'd have been grabbing cats that work at the Subway. They'd have been grabbing DJs, homeless brothers up in the street. Like, they'd have been grabbing everybody would have been on the line of scrimmage. Like, they were, and then Jalen Hurts or Kenny Pickett or whoever was going to be eligible to play that game or whatever it was, would have thrown for 7,000 yards. There was no way. Like, we act like the Giants defense would have been like, I concede, we've been bad. John Mara would have gone into that locker room and given a speech like he was Braveheart or some nonsense like that and threatened those dudes' lives. The reality of it is that guy would have come in there and been like, yo, if y'all give this dude any space, pack it up, y'all are gone. Y'all are going to be in like the XFL like next week.
It's literally one of those situations where you're told you have one job.
One job.
The one job is he does not go off. He does not get an opportunity to get this record in the first half. If they really want it, they'll have to play him for the game to get it. And winning and losing, yeah, I mean, this is what winning and losing would have been for them, right? It's not the end in terms of the final score, is whether or not Saquon got his yards. So with that, we did sort of segue a little bit in terms of the Green Bay Packers and the injuries they did sustain, unfortunately going into the playoffs. And, that's our matchup in week one. Or in the first round of playoffs. And interestingly enough, in week one, that was our matchup, the Green Bay Packers in Brazil. So now we're bringing it back to continental U.S. home game at the link. Should be a nice cold weather game. What are your predictions?
Well, I'm glad Jalen Hurts practiced today. I mean, that's the first thing.
And before you start, really quickly, as we switch topics again, for those that are possibly watching, hit the good old like button, hit the subscription button, and if you want to tune in, we have dropped the link in the comment section. So again, how do you feel about going into is it Saturday or Sunday? I think
Sunday afternoon. You got the 4:30 slot. Perfect. I think the Eagles win the game. I mean, I think the Eagles are a better team. I like the fact that they are a healthy team. I think they are built for this. And I think there is a secondary effect, not to go back to the conversation we were just having, but there's a secondary effect. Like, I've got to believe that they're going to rally around, like, hey, let's all now be focused on the main thing, right? The 2,000 yards, the 2104, whatever the record was great. But now we're on to the main thing, right? Let's not let this first game be a distraction, right? Let's not be disappointed. Let's reinforce and double down while we're here. And so you got a chance for Jalen to hopefully get whatever rust off. Saquon's going to absolutely be motivated. You got Nakobe Dean, who missed the last game, was kind of an under-discussed item. He's going to be hopefully back. So now you got a lot of dudes who are healthy, and Green Bay is kind of uncertain. So I would expect Love to play unless he can literally not grab a ball. But these guys are going to be in it for an absolute fight in a stadium where if these dudes bring the same energy that they've been bringing all season, Philadelphia has a great road. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but they've got a great road. Well, and I like the way it sets up.
So before we get ahead of ourselves, because again, this is literally one game at a time. We have no idea in terms of schedule who's next. I have a comment here from Joe Bradley saying they better not lose in the first round. Ian Rappaport reported earlier in the week that Nick may not be back if they lose to Green Bay. Fair or foul?
Absolutely foul.
Fair or foul? You said foul?
Absolutely foul. Okay. Absolutely foul.
So in your opinion, there are no circumstances in which Nick does not return next year as the Eagles head coach?
I think if we were to have fired Nick Sirianni, it should have been after last season. I think if we were to have fired him, it would have been because you have a team that has not been galvanized, is distracted, is being pulled a number of different directions, that they did not seem motivated to play. The issues that we had last year, even with the talent, let's forget the talent for a quick second, even with the talent, right? We had guys who just weren't in the right spots. We never had answers for scenarios. The Eagles actually look like a cohesive unit on both sides of the ball, right? Jalen said it a couple of weeks ago before he got hurt, like, you want us to run it, we can run it. You want us to pass it, we can pass it. Is that what you're here for, right? Are you not entertained, basically, is what he hit him with, right? And listen, it's the main thing being the main thing. We can get it all, and the main thing for the coach, CEO/coach, is winning. And to go from where we were to what we are, 14-3, and an ascending group, you can't fire him after one season.
So here's where I agree, because there was a point in time where I felt Nick Sirianni's position going into next year wasn't solidified. But I agree with you wholeheartedly that this has been one of the more cohesive teams that I've watched in a long time. And the fact that statistically our defense is top 2, if not the best defense in the league, you don't really throw the coach away after you've created something like that. And here's what's beautiful about the Eagles defense. Youngest defense on average, right? So this is something that you can build on. So I would also lean towards the idea that if there was a breakdown in the game where the Eagles were to have lost, then I think that there's underperformance, right? Like, I think that there's a way to identify the areas of weakness that don't include game management. Now, if it's a game management loss, that's damning, right? Because now it's like, listen, with how dominant this team is, you are actually not the right person at the helm to just help us navigate through certain landmines and situations. So absent a game management failure, I think it's hard pressed for me to believe that simply a loss would create a situation where they're looking for a new coach for next year.
The other thing is this, right? Green Bay is 11-6, right? And at the beginning of the season, it was a chic pick to be like Green Bay might be in the Super Bowl. And while they may have underperformed short of Super Bowl expectations, their division is crazy. Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay, obviously, right? And we're not talking about the days where like a 7-9 team sneaks into the playoffs and whoever is that seed that gets the number one seed gets the deal and bounce them out. We're not talking about an 11-6 team. That's no slouch, right? And so, like, let's not jump to the conclusion that, hey, if they lose in any like game management, if Sirianni makes a series of bad decisions, I'm sure there will be conversation around it. But if Green Bay plays a good game and the Eagles play a good game, it will be a good game. I believe the Eagles will win a well-contested game. But this is not a team where it's like, oh, you got the benefit of being the number one seed, so you play the Cardinals and they're 7-9. And no, this is not that. This is not that. Like Jordan Love and all those dudes, that defense were like, yo, they might be Super Bowl picks at the beginning of the season. And so for what it's worth, if you match those teams up right now, I think the Eagles win. I think the Eagles are healthier. I think Jordan Love has been erratic, and some of the things that we were concerned with Jalen Hurts in terms of turnovers earlier in the season, not being able to make the explosive plays. I think the Eagles can control the game defensively, right? Limit him because he doesn't have the guys on the outside with Christian Watt. Dobbs is a good player, but he's not going to scare anybody, right? So they should be able to control the game. They limit Josh Jacobs, and Jalen Hurts is going to just make enough plays, which is all they need to do when you've got a top-ranked defense and a 2,000-yard runner in the backfield.
So I'm listening to what you're saying, right? I'm hearing you loud and clear. And then I'm looking at Joe's comment. Is it Joe? Oh, I should deceive me. I think Joe. Comment in terms of Ian Rappaport's report. And so it does sort of fit the narrative because from your perspective, the Eagles should win this game.
They should win the game.
Right? So if the Eagles should win based off of all the reasons you've laid out, and they don't come away victorious, there's going to be some real questions as to whether or not you have the guy to take this team to the promised land.
Let's separate. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. I was going to say really quickly, I have another comment here. It says, if Hurts stinks, is it time to consider he may not be the guy? He's 29th in the league in passing yards with elite wide receivers. Is that good enough to win a Super Bowl? Well, my initial response to that, Joe, is I think it's good enough if he gets it done, right? Like winning is winning. And so however we utilize the skill positions around us to come up with more points than the opponent at the end of 60 minutes, I'm good with. We've had conversations where we felt the Eagles should have been a running team last year. Yep. They were seen to be forcing the ball down the field. So I don't think Jalen's statistics indicate to me as to whether or not he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. It's just about winning the game. And I think he's a winner, and I think he's game on. When I've seen him struggle is when he didn't have A.J. Brown. That's when I've seen him struggle, is when AJ's not available.
Comparatively, you've heard the phrase, I'm sure everybody's heard the phrase, styles make fights, right?
Yeah.
Styles make fights. And, Jalen Hurts, when he was it Pittsburgh? Was that when he came out and said, are you not entertained, basically? Steelers defense was top ranked. They have a strong front seven. They are known for being physical. The thing that we're not giving the Eagles credit for, and regardless of what you think about Jalen, whether or not he should be the guy or whatever, is one, they win, right? So we don't have too many losses, but for a drop pass against Atlanta or whatever it is, and a drop pass against the Commanders, we're what, 16-1, basically?
Think about it. Our two of the three losses is because we didn't ice the game properly.
Drop passes, right? Yes, right? So there's that. But the other thing is this. This is probably the first time in a long time where I could actually say that the Eagles are the physical team. Like, when growing up, you might have been like, yo, the Steelers, you're going to bring your hard hat. You know what it's going to be. The Baltimore Ravens, you knew what it was going to be. The Niners defense, right, for more recently, you knew what it was going to be. The Eagles input, like when you get an 8-minute drive on somebody, right? What do I need Jalen Hurts to do? Now, I know that he can, but Styles made fights.
There was a game. You said an 8-minute drive. There was a game this year. I think it was 10:29.
It might have been 10 minutes. It might have been a 10-minute drive.
It was a 10-minute drive.
But that's my point.
Drive. Yeah.
He is able to, in moments, make the kind of plays that are saying, like, I trust you to make smart decisions with the football and then move around enough to give our skilled guys a chance.
So, Joe, to your question, sorry about that. I have to give Malik a pause before I come in. But to your question, that's where I am. So Jalen doesn't have to be a perfect passer to win me over. He just has to make plays when plays are needed. I think we all want to see a well-oiled machine. And I think 2 years ago, we got a taste of it. And so the thought is, if you have better players and they're in the system or there's more continuity, why can't we see more just consistent drives? You know, it's like the sputtering still feels bothersome. Think about our first quarters for the year. Yeah. For the season, we were horrendous in the first quarter. And finally, towards the end of the season, we started to just click as soon as, you know, the kickoff. So I'm expecting more of the latter. I think that we've turned the page in terms of understanding how we can get first downs and matriculate the ball downfield while still looking for the opportunity to take the shots. And I also think that we are so comfortable in who we are that we don't have to risk it for the biscuit, and that we can adjust, you know, if a defense decides to overcommit to stopping one area.
Let me ask you this question. Can I ask you this question? Because you just said risk it for the biscuit. And I think a lot of times we feel more comfortable when we see our team successfully risk it for the biscuit, right? Oh, they threw the ball downfield, they can do that. The big plays all over the place. You got guys who can go out there and catch it. Why don't they do that? Where do we think Jalen Hurts is in terms of quarterback rankings in the league? Right? Like, just off the cuff, without even giving you names, if you had to throw a number out there off the top of your head, where do you think he's at? Because we talk about this dude like he's a bottom half guy.
Right. I would probably rank him at like 10.
So a top 10 quarterback. All right. So let me just give you. I got the list up here in front of me right now. Let me just give you some names. Would you take him over Jared Goff or Jalen Hurts? Would you go Goff or Hurts?
Why are you doing this to me? I would go. So here's what's so annoying about this. Why are you doing this? This is not even what we're supposed to be doing right now.
Listen, the question was about
if I take a player by himself, give me Hurts. But there are moments when you think, man, when you have these receivers,
sure.
If you had just like a pure passer with these receivers, I wonder what that looks like. At the same time, he complements this running game so beautifully that it's like, are you really going to give that part up? So for me, because of the dual threat, I would go with Jalen over Goff.
Then I'll save you the point. I'll save the point for you then. Because what we're watching right, and I'm not suggesting he is him. Do we believe that Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback? Obviously, the answer is yes, right? Universally, he's incredible. He's not having a great season. He's not doing statistically what we are capable of, but not one person has any doubt in his ability. I'm not comparing Jalen Hurts to him. What I'm saying is that he is, like Jalen is this season, doing what is required to win, right? I don't need – could Jalen go out and throw it to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and all those dudes? Absolutely. But every single series is 1st and 8, basically, right? And from that point in time, he's either able to turn around and get 6 or 7 yards easily with Saquon or make the smart pass to A.J. Brown, who is unguardable in short distances. Like, what are we talking about here? There are not many players, aside from maybe a Josh Allen or a Mahomes or a Lamar. You're not taking many dudes over Jalen, right? And don't give me Jaden Daniels, because Jaden Daniels, let's see him in 2 seasons. So, I'm not going to disrespect him and be like, yo, Ball was 14-3. He was a Super Bowl quarterback. He lost the game because of a fumble, realistically, and played incredibly well. I'm not going to disrespect the dude by saying all these other guys because we haven't seen him throw the ball the way we want to. We allowed Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's home. His defense stuck. But we went into Cincinnati, and he outplayed him.
So I think about a comment Larry Boa made about Cole Hamels one time. He said he's game on. And so that's how I see Jalen Hurts. As much as I may lament his shortcomings in moments at times, in terms of the lack of consistency through a 60-minute game, he's game on. And his teammates know he's game on. And there is a belief that when it's time for him to make a play, he will make the play.
He makes the play, man.
That goes a long way. But Joe actually is still sort of asking a matter-of-fact question. If he does struggle against Green Bay and they lose, do you think in terms of the fan base, how do we feel about the quarterback? Like if we think the quarterback's the reason we didn't win the game, how are we going to feel going into the next offseason? That's a legitimate question.
I don't think that Jalen Hurts is so where are we upgrading to? Right? You know, the Eagles are for all of the youth that's on the team right now, the Eagles are not built in a way that we're going to replace an integral part like that and replace him with an upgrade, right? We've seen that in the Jets. The Jets thought they could just swap in Aaron Rodgers and he could take that same defense from last year, add Devontae Adams, change the coach, and all of a sudden they were going to be a better squad and they weren't, right? And they're actually a poorer team than they were last year. I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts, I'm not naive enough to think that Jalen Hurts is as gifted a passer as a Joe Burrow or a Josh Allen or whoever, right? I'm not that. But what I'm not ready to do is say that even if he plays a bad game, that he is out. I do want to go back to something we were talking about earlier, though, real quick. So the question earlier was about whether or not Sirianni can be out after this season. I want to add to that, does he deserve an extension, actually? Because of what we've seen him do in this short term, right? Let's say he wins against Green Bay on Sunday. And then who knows what happens in the semifinal round or whatever it is, right? At the divisional round. Does he deserve an extension? Because I believe that next season is his last season under contract. And so what more do you really need to see about it from a dude who's taken the team to the playoff multiple years, presumably he's had at least one deep playoff run, rebounded after the team fell apart, and is now the number 2 team in the conference. Like, what more do you need to see from this guy before you decide to go give this guy a contract?
So what's interesting is that I think he's made the playoff every year.
I think so.
So, yeah, because even in his first year, they went on a run where they ended up 9-7 and got a chance to play Tampa Bay.
And got rolled by Tampa, yeah.
They got rolled by Tampa Bay. Year 2, they go to the Super Bowl. Year 3, they get rolled by Tampa Bay again. Here we are in year 4. So it's made the playoffs every year. Here's just the funny thing about Sirianni. Doug Peterson was the underdog coach, right? Like that's who he was. He Philadelphia identified with him because he was the underdog. He was the backup quarterback. You know, we knew who he was. He was under Andy Reid. He was a hometown guy in the sense that we were familiar, but he was never the guy, right? And so this is the chance to give the guy who wasn't the guy a chance, and he led us to the promised land. But what I remember so distinctly was in the speech, because I was down there. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you had an opportunity to come to Philly for that parade, but I was there. Yeah. Listen, I remember singing, "They don't like us, we don't care," right? That wasn't really Doug Peterson. Doug wasn't the guy that they just didn't like, "We don't care." But that is Nick Sirianni.
100%.
Like he really absolutely is the coach for this team. He's the "they don't like us, we don't care" coach who's better made for Philadelphia. And if he has this kind of success where free agents are flocking here, right? CJ wanted to come back, and he has been extremely impactful on this team. And he's a stud. He's a dude. So if you get dudes who want to come and sign with the Eagles, they draft well. He is a good CEO of an organization. I mean, if the one thing he's responsible for is the cohesiveness of the whole collective, how do you not give him an A there, right? So his ability to bring in young talent, and with the old talent, you lose your elder statesman and Kelsey, you lose Cox, right? You lose these guys who were the voices of the locker room on the defensive, offensive side, and now you have to entrust younger players, and you have to be a larger voice here now, right? And he's done such a job, and at the same time, as fans, we can have fun with him. Right.
By the way, let's give him credit. Let's give him credit in that, because in transitioning from your Kelseys and your Fletcher Coxes, now all of a sudden, and Brandon Graham decides to lob a bomb in the middle of the season, right, at the team. You've also elevated guys. Not that Lane Johnson, we've heard more from Lane Johnson, right? We've heard more from Jordan Mailata. So all of a sudden, guys who were maybe less vocal because of how prominent those other dudes were are now being, or not, I don't say groomed, but given opportunity for them to fill the room a little bit more. And I think that's to Sirianni's credit. So ultimately, let me just ask you, if they lose Sunday, I don't believe that he should be fired. Do you believe? I assume that you don't believe, you feel the same way. Is that correct?
I like my coach.
Okay.
That's right. I think Sirianni is. I feel like he is an Eagles coach. He's an
Eagles coach. Barring something ridiculous, regardless of the outcome, he's back next year if you're the owner. If you're Sam Lurie.
Wait, hold on, Malik. You're chopping up a little bit on my end.
Oh, my bad.
All right, say it again.
I'm chopped and screwed. All right. No, what I was saying is, barring something unforeseen, something outrageous, like some outrageous outcome, right? If you are the owner, he is coming back next year.
If I'm the owner, he's absolutely coming back next year.
Okay. Now, my next question.
I like the product under his helm.
Okay. So then, is he at this point deserving of a contract extension?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I agree.
It's funny because that's the last thought in anyone's mind in terms of the Eagles fan. The last thing you're thinking about is an extension. But the reality is you don't want to create a Dallas situation, right? The Eagles have never put themselves in that kind of predicament.
Well, how bad is that? Yo, can we talk about that for 1 second?
Yeah, let me get this. Well, let me just I'll share Joe's last comment. That Jalen isn't the catalyst of the team, that he's more of a game manager of the team. And I can agree with that, but I think even in his ability to game management, he offers such a unique skill set to it, right? Like, to me, he's the elite game manager, right? Like,
I'm not offended.
I'm not either. Like, that's his NFL skill, because he can manage it in the running game as a quarterback position and manage it in the passing game. He can get the ball downfield. He can get you on your outs. He can get you the ball over the middle to your tight ends. He can make all of the throws. It's just sometimes you wonder if things are so dynamic in terms of what he is seeing, how quickly he's able to manage, because that was part of the conversation that even what's his name, AJ, right? Like, in terms of what needs to improve in the passing game. So
listen, I'm gonna do it like that. I'm gonna tell you like this. See, we got to get over trying to be the headliner on the marquee, right?
Agreed.
Because that's really it. Like, game manager doesn't offend me. The other thing is this, right? Like, you know the Temptations, right? I'm sure your parents used to play the Temptations, or you're old school, whatever it is. You might listen. Okay, so you know that scene where David Ruffin is like, "Ain't nobody come here to see you, Otis," in the movie. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever seen that? Right? Jalen is Otis, okay? And I mean that respectfully. Jalen is Otis. Ain't nobody come here to see you, Otis. This is the reality of it. Jalen he helped found the group. He's on stage. He's doing all the moves. And if you need me to sing a part, I can sing my part. That's it. We might be here for David Ruffin, right? We might be here for Devontae Smith being David, or AJ being David. Sometimes, Saquon might be Blue hitting the deep notes or whatever it is. But every now and again, you need an Otis. Every group's got an Otis, okay? And that's it. There's no real reason to be offended by that, okay? So if he goes off and does his part at his time, that song still bangs. We still win. It's cool being Otis, dog. Here's what it is.
Hey, man, that was awesome.
I'm just telling you the truth.
And I think, to your point, Jalen is very comfortable in his own skin, right?
Be you.
Right. Wait, he said Otis wasn't making $55 million a year.
Listen, Ruffin was a crackhead, dog. All right, you can be Ruffin if you want. Otis was in like 5 different versions of the attempts. Okay.
Okay. So, Dallas, right? What they're doing with Mike McCarthy. And it's funny because I listened to, what's it called? The faculty. First of all, my man Shady McCoy, like I love his analysis. Like he's very, I think he's
Wait,
really good on
is
the show.
that wait? Is that the show with your girl Joy Taylor?
No. Speak for yourself. This
Oh,
is
okay.
the
I
new
was,
one.
I thought that
But they do have Ocho or Acho. So
was,
Acho,
oh, I
yeah. So Acho is on the show. But one of the things Shady said about, because we were talking about the Dallas situation, like this is Jerry Jones really just getting what he wants on his terms, right? Like as much as we say, like, what is he doing? What is he doing? At the end of the day, he wants to retain Mike McCarthy, and he's doing it on his terms. He's not going to let him speak to anyone because he's still technically under contract. That's the provisions of their agreement that Mike McCarthy signed. So everyone like getting upset that he's not granting permission, it's like, but he doesn't have to. And
wait,
if
but
he did
this is
have
the silly
to,
thing, Sam. This is the silly thing about that, though. He has the ability to extend his contract, right?
mm-hmm.
So either extend him or fire him and let him go on about his business, right? The other thing is Jerry Jones the other day, I want to say it was earlier this week, was asked about if they're going to make any organizational changes, or they're going to hire, personnel or general manager or whatever it was, and he was quoted as saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he did not buy the team to enjoy, he hired it to have an occupation. Yo, if I was bad at my job for literally 20 years, I would fire me, right? Like you can say what you want, but the Cowboys haven't done anything. The Cowboys have not done anything. The Cowboys are what the Eagles used to be when I was a kid now, right? Like think about that. Think about that. So when I was born in the early 80s, right, and we had no real success. We had a couple playoff stints here, whatever it was, but it wasn't until Andy Reid showed up, when Donovan McNabb showed up in the early 2000s, late 1990, 99, 2000, whatever it was. For 20 years, we were in the wilderness. Jerry Jones is out there in the wilderness right now. They are like as bad as we were through your Kevin Cobbs and your early stages McNabbs and your Ty Detmers and your Bubby Bristers and your whatever it was. They are in that space right now.
And what's interesting about that take is that they were also in the space when we were as good as we were then, because as good as we were then still wasn't good enough, right? So like I think about the years with Randall when you had like, it's not like they haven't had marquee names behind center, right? Like they had their Tony Romos, Dak Prescott got paid. He's the highest paid quarterback. He's the highest paid player in the league, right? So it's not like they haven't had names at positions the same way we grew up with names at positions. Right. And there was things about the team that were really elite, but it wasn't a collective team, and that's why we faltered in the playoffs. So I think you are absolutely right that this is the yesterday of the Eagles, right? In terms of some years they're good, but never either way they're never good enough, right?
That's right.
The difference is that they're always the talk of the town. But here's why I say Jerry Jones has not made a misstep here at all. You're saying either you let him go or you sign him, and I'm saying there's another alternative where you're going to sign them at your number under your conditions. And I think that's what he's playing out. Like, listen, you signed a contract that allows me to keep you under contract through the 14th of January. The market is the market. You agree to this. So I can wait the market out where there's no other opportunities and say, okay, let's resign. Let's negotiate. What are you going to do? Walk to nowhere else? Listen. So I think Jerry Jones is playing this masterfully. He's going to get his guy, but he's going to get his guy at his number.
Mike McCarthy.
He's not going to negotiate against himself.
Listen, we've all got coworkers or had coworkers at various points in time, and we all go home and we all complain about them, right? At some point in time. Mike McCarthy looked over there and was like, yo, I still got Brandon Cooks. Wait, behind me, I got Ezekiel Elliott. Dog, I need to get the hell up out of here. That's what he No, but he will in a week. If Jerry Jones doesn't act on the 14th, he will be out of contract.
Right, but that's the point, Malik. A week, there won't be jobs to fill. Those teams aren't waiting. That's the whole point.
I have to. Well, listen, if there are no jobs left, and right now we've still got openings, right? The Raiders are opening, the Bears are having opening. So there are still jobs available, right? If in a week's time they are all gone, then I get it. Then he's out. He's up a creek.
I'd be shocked if they weren't.
I think that we will still have something. But to be honest with you, is Dallas really an attractive job? To be frank. I mean, I know it's only 32 of them, so I put that aside for a second.
But think about it. If you don't lose your starting quarterback, we don't know where Dallas ended up with what 7-8 wins on the season.
No, Dallas would have absolutely been in playoff contention. There's no question about it.
If I'm a coach and I get a chance to coach a playoff team in Dallas, I mean, yeah, they're still very attractive.
All right, so let's go further with it, right? So at the time of Mike McCarthy's looking at the season, he's saying, you made Dak Prescott wait literally until week 1 to get his contract, right? You made CeeDee Lamb wait literally until the first practice to get his contract. Michael Parsons hasn't been re-signed. I've got no running back. I've got a limited offensive supporting cast around CeeDee Lamb. And my defense has a bunch of corners who keep getting hurt and no real pass rush except for Michael Parsons. Right?
Okay, I'll take the Chicago job instead. What are we talking about?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. I'm just thinking and the other piece here that I didn't say is you've got Jerry Jones hovering over you, looking like the Emperor from Star Wars every 6 seconds, right? Like that's a big burden to carry, man. And so
I've carried it for the last 5 years or 4 years.
Right.
Listen, the way it's going to play out, he's going to get his guy at his number. There are going to be less jobs available for him to negotiate against himself with. I mean, this is just a Jerry Jones play. Everyone thinks it's obnoxious, but that's how the guy's going to remain employed. At the end of the day, he's going to remain employed. But I don't want to park here because it kind of goes against the whole.
Yeah, no, I know. And speaking of obnoxious, I think we need to finish on this last point. Go for it.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah, speaking of obnoxious, are the Sixers ready to win? I mean, can I get any more obnoxious? Yes, we beat the Washington Wizards tonight, right? And from what I've read, we staved off a comeback. So there was a comeback in the works for the Washington Wizards.
No, we had to come back. We had to come back.
He had to come back to win the game?
We were up, then Washington made a run, and then we had to come back. We had to come back.
I just read the headline. That shows you, one, how much I am invested at this stage. And I think there's a larger issue. And I'm glad you and I are finally getting back on wax a little bit to talk about this, because as we move to the playoffs, I mean, we started with baseball and we went into the NFL season. And the NFL season is about to start the playoffs, right? Which means that it's going to conclude soon, which will give us only the NBA to watch. It's a tough watch. The NBA as a sport is a tough watch. I'm a Hall of Famer in basketball. Basketball is my love.
You said the NBA or the Sixers is a tough watch?
The NBA is a tough watch.
Oh, wow. That's a broader conversation. Okay.
Right. It's funny because even though the NBA is a tough watch, I actually enjoy the Sixers. The reason I enjoy the Sixers is because the Sixers have the way they score baskets reminds me more of old school basketball, because I'm seeing shots made from 3 levels on the court. When I watch most NBA games, I'm just seeing a lot of offense designed to generate shots from the perimeter. The Sixers will still throw it into Embiid and let him work the elbow. They'll still throw it to Embiid in the post. Paul George is a mid-range assassin. He has a great 3-point shot, a field goal percentage, but I mean, he'll break you down and hit that mid-range. Tyrese gets to the rack. So watching the Sixers, to me, I see 3-level scoring, which reminds me more of my understanding of basketball. The rest of this league, it's all about getting 3-point shots up. Like, you're only beating your man to kick it out. And once we don't have football, I'm just saying, we're just stuck with that. And I don't know what I'm going to do this year. It's going to be tough.
Did you, I just want to make sure I understood you. Did you say Paul George is an assassin or was assassinated this season? Like, what did you say? Because I've watched the majority, if not all of these Sixers games. And he might have been. He either was assassin before or he's been assassinated since. But both can't be true right now. Both cannot be true right now.
You gotta chill, man. Listen,
I'm just saying. Let's keep it all the way real, man. Like,
you gotta chill. I'm telling you, Paul's going to come around, because here's why I give Paul George credit. I don't know what's going on with him offensively. Like, I don't get it sometimes, the way he seems to fade. I know that's been a thing a bit in his career at times, but I still don't understand it. However, I am seeing a commitment on the defensive end, and I'm seeing a commitment for him to be a connector. Like, he still is reading the game the right way and sometimes making the right plays. I think what we're concerned about is his deference, right? Where it's like, hey, brother, you know this is time for you to boogie, and or you're easily running away from the ball, right? Like, there's times I've seen him offensively come down the court, and the way he's running from the ball is like you're not anticipating a pass. It's like your body language says, I'm not the feature on this possession. And I know that there are moments where guys are on the court thinking, I need your energy towards the ball. So even if you're cutting through, you're looking so people know he's trying to attract the basketball in this possession.
So I think he is in an environment that facilitates exactly what you just said, unfortunately. I like Tyrese Maxey. I think Maxey is a fantastic person. I think he's a great player, right? I think he's even got room to grow. I don't think he's been well served. And I promise I'll bring this point back around to Paul George. I don't think he's been well served because Nick Nurse, and you know that you play ball at a level differently than I did, right? But it looks to me is that they are emphasizing concepts rather than giving direction, right? There's a lot of kind of like emphasis on movement and dribble handoffs and, kind of like high pick and rolls, whatever it is. And it's fluid. It's not designed. It's not intentional, right? And so Maxey, who has the ball in his hands because pretty much he's the only dude who's able to get to the basket consistently, right? As a primary ball handler, he has to put up so many shots. So many of them are inefficient, wild shots because in this offense, where it's about movement and continuity, he's the only guy who can facilitate an opportunity on his own. Embiid can get it, but Embiid's been off injured. Kelly Oubre, we don't want him doing a whole lot. Caleb Martin's not a guy that's going to dribble and beat a man, right? These aren't guys who create their own shots in most cases. Paul George being deferential in an offense that only really allows you to facilitate based on movement and opportunity, he's got to be more assertive. And if Nurse isn't going to direct him to be, he's going to stand in the corner or drift and take some wild fadeaway three with like 3 seconds left in the shot clock. It just doesn't work.
But see, that's the point. I think he's supposed to be more assertive. I don't think the design is for him to operate the way he's operating. For some reason, like, I think it's a personality trait. I think, Embiid is a person who does still ball hawk a bit. Like, I would like to see Embiid as more of a facilitator. I would love to see Embiid really focus on getting guys going a little bit more. Now, I know part of their design is to get Embiid flowing when he's in the first quarter. Like, the whole idea is that you heavy load him in the first quarter, allow him to kind of like get in a rhythm. But again, depending on how the defenses are playing him, I would like him to see him more intentional just as a playmaker early on in every single game because he can always hunt shots. Embiid. If Embiid was more intentional as a playmaker, he can always get his shots. But if he's more intentional as a playmaker, then you get Paul George with a different kind of energy early. So even if you go away from him later, like, he's still on the ready for that catch and shoot opportunity because you got him going. Embiid's the one I think that dictates all of this. It's not Maxey. Maxey's just going to go. Like, Maxey's going to be Maxey all the time. But it's Embiid that I think gives other guys real juice around being offensive threats.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you, but what I see and what I think happens with the Sixers, they don't play with any physicality or tone. Like, you never feel the Sixers at all. And I think a lot of that has to do with, like, I do believe you're right about the Nurse point, right? About him being assertive, that the intention is for George to be more assertive. But what I'm saying is that I wish Nurse, seeing that George is being deferential, directs him to be, or specifically call something for him. Like, a superstar may not need that, but do it for him. And the other point, real quick, the other point is this. I love that Embiid has the skill and ability to do whatever he wants on the floor. I do. But I do think the conversation around, well, we don't want to see him in the post all the time versus the mid post versus trying to beat a man at the top of the key or wherever he's at. There's a tone that is established when you got a 7'2", 270-pound dude who is able to impose his will because that creates opportunities for other guys. And he may be able to get his own shot and not be doubled at the mid post or at the foul line or whatever it is, but he's not creating the opportunities and space for his guys there the way that he could if he was on the block.
Whether he just I gotta push back on that because think about Jokic, right? Jokic almost led the league in assists one year, and he never gets the ball primarily on the block. He gets to see the whole court all the time. And I think for Embiid, because he still has some challenges with double teams, it's better that he has most of the court in front of him. So it's a mindset in terms of playmaking versus scoring. And right now, Embiid is locked into scoring the basketball, and I think he'll just be better served. The team will be better served if they knew that it could be live at any time, that he's looking to move the ball as much as – think about the Spurs in the past, right? Duncan could eat, but at the same time, Duncan moved the ball. What made him such a threat is the fact that he wasn't only a scorer, that he recognized that if you load up on him, he knows where the ball's supposed to go and he'll get it there. Nick Nurse has made comments about wanting to see the two-man game between Paul George and Embiid develop. And here's why I'll give him credit, because this is something that I even recognize. Listen, I'm a fan. I'm watching this stuff. There's a lot of components that go into an NBA season. And sometimes when you're installing offense, it's over a season, right? It's not just in the mini camp in terms of here's who we are going to be. You use the whole season to prepare yourself for the postseason. So I believe that there is still a stretch where we're going to start seeing a little bit more primary Paul George and Embiid interaction, so that is also cultivated along this season so that they can pull it out in the postseason. So I think that there's more iterations of our offense, which would, one, call Paul George to be more assertive. To your point, it's being more intentional, saying, listen, I'm designing the two-man game with you and Embiid. This is going to be the primary offense over the next 5 games. Like, this is what I want us to focus on, is this two-man game. So I believe that is coming, because I've seen it in the past where I've watched the games, wondered why we weren't doing certain things, and then all of a sudden we get a heavy dose of it for a period of time. I'm realizing, okay, I just think they use the whole season to slowly implement how they're going to be by the time the playoffs come around.
So the question was, are the Sixers ready to win? Your thoughts? Your answer?
Here's my answer. Let's look at the stats. Standings. So we know they started the season 3-14.
Yep.
Over the last 10, the Sixers are – where's my 10? 6-4. 6-4 over the last 10. We had one, like, I know we lost that Kings game, which was a bad loss, because we really should have, like, that. We just didn't know how to close that game out. And then we weren't in that Warriors game at all, if I recall. Outside of that Kings loss, though, the Sixers have been playing pretty good basketball, but the reality is, at the last 10, we're 6-4. Like, that's what it comes down to. 6-4 in the last 10.
Let me tell you who the next 10 are real quick. If okay, just so to your point, Pelicans on Friday, right? Zion's back. He may or may not. He might drop some food off. He may be distracted. I don't know. All right, Banchero and the Magic, right? In Orlando. Then we come back home, and this is assuming we get one combination of all of them. Some combination of George and Maxey, George Embiid and Maxey. Who knows what we get, right?
Because I think we only had Maxey tonight.
We only had Maxey tonight, right? And I'm not even really sure why Embiid was out, right? Because
he has a foot injury now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So we don't even know what's going on. He was healthy enough to get off the fourth quarter against the Nets, come back. He's injured now for the Suns game, and now we're also out for the Wizards game.
You know what I think happened, in my opinion? When he dunked against the Nets. I think he hurt his foot dunking. I don't think he should try to dunk the basketball anymore. Like, you're labored. Stop being weird. Like, he does weird stuff sometimes, and it
falls over all the time.
It bothers me. It's like he just loses sight of the bigger picture in moments. And whatever your frustration is, when he came down the court in that Nets game to take off, like, he took off the dunk, knowing you got to land on bad legs. It's like, for what, man? It's still 2 points. It's a regular season. You know better than this.
Sam, let me give you the next 10. Pelicans, Magic, Thunder, Knicks, Pacers, Bucks, Denver, Cavs, Bulls, Lakers. And I gotta tell you, and the majority of those games are, let's say, 2 days apart. 2-3 days most. Some of those are back-to-backs, and a couple games are like 3 or 4. So let's say it's a 2-day break between most of those games. Sam, if we go 6-4 in that 10-game stretch, it'll be like a belabored Christmas. It'll be like a Martin Luther King present, whatever the next holiday is. Like I don't see it. I don't see it.
I'll tell you this much: if we go 6-4 in the next 10 games, I know we're legit.
We're legit,
especially knowing that it's not going to be 10 games with all 3 players playing together.
Exactly right. And so for a team that is 15-20, what are we, 15-20 now? Yeah. So for a team that is 15-20, and I got to tell you, the teams above us, like the Pacers aren't going to crater. The Hawks, maybe. The Heat, we'll see with Jimmy Butler, but they're not a franchise that completely bottoms out. The Pistons are the playoff spot. I'm sorry, the play-in spot. You know, Tobias has got those dudes playing. He's got those dudes playing. And so the 10th spot is the Bulls, right? Like,
but I mean, if you look at it, we're only 3.5 games out of the 3rd spot.
And so what my point is with health and what stretch of the season we're about to run into, right?
Right.
What's a realistic? You're right, but what's a realistic expectation for these dudes?
If we're 3.5 games out of the 3rd spot after the next 10 games, then we are going to make a real push, in my opinion. I think we'll make a push I'm talking about like a push to be inside the play or to avoid the play. Yeah, I think that if we could be 3.5 games out of the 6th spot after this next 10-game stretch, then I think we're going to play to avoid the play. And at that point, then I know that this team is live, especially starting 3-14.
If we are able to get through this next 10-500, then I think there's a realistic chance that the Sixers could look to the trade deadline and say maybe there's a move to be made, maybe there's something to happen. But this is the stretch where we really can find ourselves buried.
So here's the tough part about the whole trade deadline is the fact that I think our main trade piece is injured, right?
Yeah.
It's Kenny Martin Jr. He's the guy that we signed to that deal so we could use his salary to get a real piece. I thought at least that was the strategy as I understood it. So they started him for most of the year, and I thought he's been serviceable. Like he's been part of the teams that were turning things around. Unfortunately, he gets injured, but I do believe he has to get on the court for us to get the value out of that deal, so we can get a piece that can really assist us in the playoffs.
Well, I think we are a long way, and realistically, I think to answer your question, the Sixers ready to win. Honestly, so what? I'm so defeated by these dudes. I hate to say it. We were so excited at the beginning of the season, but the reality of it is that I don't know that they've built the kind of cohesion. They've not built the callus necessary to go through a playoff run. And anybody they play in the first round, God bless it if they get out of the play-in, right? Because you're looking at either the Celtics or the Cavs in round 1, probably Knicks or somebody like round 2. Like, what's the realistic position? And then teams that are ascending with like the Magic are competitive, and they've not had half their dudes either, right? Like Banchero's been out, Wagner's been out, right? But those dudes somehow are competitive, and meanwhile we have no plan. So I watch them because I like abuse. I don't know. I like pain. There's nothing else on TV. I'm not gonna watch the news at this point, right? So what are we ready to win? Okay, should they win is really the question we should be asking. But we'll see that for another day.
Listen, this next 10 will tell us a lot. To me, this is sort of like their mini playoff, sort of, like every game matters when you're trying to mount a comeback. So let me not discredit what they've done thus far. But we also realize that this is the upper echelon of the NBA that they're about to face over the next 10. This is their litmus test in terms of where they are. This is not a period in the NBA season where you're just collecting wins. You have to win these games. And if they show enough mettle to want to win these games and scratch and claw for victories, then I'm saying this team will get into the playoff picture and be dangerous. They'll be as dangerous as we're expecting them to be, regardless of their seeding. the only team that I think that is just like we just aren't prepared for based off of our start are the Cleveland Cavaliers. Outside of the Cleveland Cavaliers, I believe that this team could be competitive against anyone. Like the Knicks, we'll see. We'll see about the Knicks because I think the Knicks are starting
competitive in a playoff series or competitive in like a game.
I'm talking about a playoff series.
In a playoff series, okay. So you believe the Sixers, if the Sixers were to make the playoffs, they'd be competitive in a series.
I'm saying if the Sixers are 500 or better in the next 10, then I believe that they'll be competitive enough in a playoff series that I would feel confident with them going against outside of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Okay.
Like to me, everything that you talked about in terms of the connectivity, the gristle, like the calluses, etc. You need that, in my opinion, to beat a Cleveland Cavalier team. That team has gone through what you're talking about.
Yeah,
they've experienced it over seasons, so they're ready to go this year. Outside of Cleveland, I'm comfortable with us seeing how we match up. If we show improve over this next 10, if we don't, then it's like we're as fair weather as we've been thus far.
Yeah.
Right? Like if guys are just choosing to not appear in meaningful games, then I'm out. Right? Because you don't want it. But this next 10 to me is an indication for me in terms of what my expectations should be moving forward. Are you ready to win or not?
This is a white flag stretch right here. Like either just wave it or we're gonna put it away. Either one. So we'll find out soon.
Agreed.
All right, we'll check back on that point.
Check back in. Well, look, man. There's another topic that I'll get into it for another day because I really want to stick to the script. Keep our episodes to about an hour, man. It's great to get back in the new year. Next time we meet, we'll have a winner of the Eagles versus Green Bay. I think we both going on record saying that the Eagles should win the game. Yeah. And we should win it in a way that looks like Eagles football. You know, like I'm expecting the Eagles to show up at the link and play Eagles football for 60 minutes. And because of that, we're victorious.
That's what it is. No one likes us, and we don't care about it. Let's go. Also, by the way, shout out to Penn State. Big game tomorrow. And either way, last note on that real quick. Either way, we're going to have a African-American head coach in the Bowl Championship Series championship game. So Franklin, I'm a Penn State grad. I would love for it to be James Franklin. Marcus Freeman's got like 12 kids, so he needs to feed all of them people. So you know what? And he's married to his wife, so shout out to Marcus Freeman. But if he makes it, hey, good luck. God bless them too. But let's go State.
Hey, man, I'm not going to root against the home team. I grew up a Notre Dame fan, you know, but at the time, I'm just a kid. You know what I mean? Notre Dame was Notre Dame. They were always different with Lou Holtz, and they had some, you know what I mean? Like, just growing up. With that said, Penn State was always the home team. Like, that was the one school, especially with football. Kajana Carter, you know, Collins, like, yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. Well, folks, thanks for joining us. Again, hope you liked the episode. Hit the like button. Hope you hit the subscription button. We'll be back next Wednesday evening at 10 o'clock Eastern time. Hopefully, we'll talk about something where you want to join. So you can just cam on up. All we just ask is you cam up. You can join the conversation. So we'll see you next Wednesday night, 10 o'clock Eastern time. Until next time, folks. Peace.
Take care.